I want to start with the breaking news in the National Football League, which is Tyreek Hill is still a member of the Kansas City Chiefs and will not be suspended a game. Not a game, not a practice, nothing. Nothing. So I look, the NFL obviously is going to get crushed on social media. It's going to be portrayed as a head in the sand. This is only about football decision. They're going to be portrayed as an organization that has a disconnect between their fan base. And you know what? I have no idea what Tyreek Hill and the mother of his child actually did. But I kind of understand this one, right? I kind of get this one. Look, I'm an Oklahoma State alum. Tyreek Hill had arguably the greatest individual play in the history of the Bedlam, we'll call it a rivalry. It's more hammer and nail, between the history of the Bedlam rivalry. His last game as a member of the Oklahoma State Cowboys, they're playing Oklahoma in Norman. Bob Stoops punts. There's a penalty on the defense, on the punt. He chooses to punt again, which is, it wasn't even hindsight. Even at the time, one of the most bizarre decisions he or any football coach has ever made. He's the best return man in the country. He's proven to be, by most people's account, if not the fastest, in the conversation of the fastest players to ever play collegiate or professional football. And Bob Stoops punted to him again. Tyreek Hill took it to the house, and Oklahoma State won the football game. By the way, that's the last time Oklahoma State won. And less than a week later, he was arrested and charged with domestic violence. Same woman, and that's part of this discussion. He had to leave the university. He ended up transferring. Obviously, he was drafted far later than he would have been otherwise. And he has reemerged in the National Football League as not only a dynamic kick returner, but one of the most dynamic receivers in the league today. You combined his speed, his route running, his pass catching, his versatility, running it out of the backfield, jet sweeps, reverses, just little screen passes to him, with his just ability to take the top off a defense. Combine that with the superpowers of Pat Mahomes, who might well have the strongest and most accurate arm. Like, there are strong arms, there are accurate arms. He seems to be both. And then you have an offensive savant like Andy Reid, and it's a match made in heaven. On the other hand, you have some of the past of the Kansas City Chiefs where, they had a player commit suicide a couple years ago. They had to get rid of the NFL's leading rusher because of a domestic violence incident. And then Tyreek Hill's own baggage, and you have a match made in hell, right? Even going and acquiring Frank Clark this offseason as a free agent who came over from Seattle, who had his own DV issues going back to college before he became a member of the Seattle Seahawks. But this is a very important thing that we have to point out as members of the media. I wanted to do this for maybe 5 years ago. Doug Gottlieb and for Colin. This is The Herd on Fox Sports Radio. I wanted to have fun on a Wednesday. Tuesdays, NFL teams have their press conferences. And on a Wednesday, what I wanted to do is have my staff edit up some of the things that were said in NFL press conferences. And when taken out of call it out of context. When taken out of context, guys can say things that come across obtuse, offensive, bizarre. Like you can cut up audio without changing words, but just cut certain sentences out, and all of a sudden, it becomes almost defaming. And I feel like what we have today is the NFL saying, "Hey, we have the full audio." They've actually had it since April. They've gone over it. And when I heard what was released from the Kansas City police TV station, when I heard it, I was like, wow. That does not sound good. There wasn't a smoking gun, but when I carried in the bias of what he had pled guilty to at Oklahoma State, what the police had stated, which was, we believe a crime occurred, we just don't know who did it. When I brought in that bias, when I brought in that baggage, I was like, man, they're going to lose Tyreek Hill for 4, 6, maybe forever. His fiance, or she was his fiance at the time, refused to have an interview with them. They had the full audio. They interviewed him for 8.5 hours in June. And to this point, they can prove no wrongdoing. And what to me this says is what I've said on radio, people said to me as a kid, I've said to my own children, which is, I don't care how bad something looks. At least be honest with me, answers the questions with me. Because sunlight is, in fact, the greatest disinfectant. Right? I mean, if you go back to why did Mike Vick go to jail? Like, Mike Vick didn't just go to jail because he was operating a dogfighting ring. Mike Vick went to jail because he was supposed to meet with Roger Goodell. He did. He lied to Roger Goodell's face. And you continue to lie about it. And once the truth comes out, and there are facts, there are evidence, there's nothing we can do to protect you from the police. Why did Tom Brady get suspended? Look, I didn't agree with the Tom Brady suspension. I have no idea who altered the footballs. But once you destroy a cell phone, once you destroy evidence, you're showing the world that even if your argument is, hey, there's lots of stuff on that cell phone that I don't want getting out, and everything from NFL investigations seems to get out. But once you do that, you feel like you're not being honest. You're not being upfront. And in this particular case, whatever is in the full context of the audio, right? Like, I've always wanted to cut up audio and make fun of NFL players, NBA players. And I've had friends that are like, dude, you just can't do that. And the recorded conversation, while it may not completely expunge him of any sort of wrongdoing, it appears it's not as damaging as we were led to believe. That there's a lot more context to it. There's a lot more in that conversation. And Twitter does not rule the world. Twitter's not going to be happy. Social media is not going to be happy. But if you think that Roger Goodell and the National Football League, who have been knee-jerk in their protection, smartly so, of their shield, especially in the nationwide and hopefully kind of worldwide fight to protect women against the violence from men, if you think that because Tyreek Hill's speed and prodigious athletic ability, that's why he's on the field, like, I got to tell you, I don't see it that way. My guess would be there is nothing there. Like, look, there's literally nothing there. Otherwise, there's no chance the NFL would do this. It's just too risky. They did a thorough investigation, and to this point, they're like, look, we got nothing. She looks bad. He looks bad. Does it sound bad to say he should be terrified of me? But by the way, she put that word in his mouth. There should be a little bit of healthy fear from a child as well as respect for their parent. I can just be like, my wife tells me that all the time, that, hey, the kids are a little bit scared of you. That's okay. That's okay. I've never laid a hand on one of my daughters. The other one's gotten smacked on the backside back when she was little. I was a spanking parent, though my wife had, when we first had kids, we're like, we're not going to, actually it was her decision. We're not going to be the parents that spank. And for the most part, I don't think we have. Maybe 2 or 3 times ever. I've lost my cool. I've never done anything to the level of that could be construed or misconstrued as being dangerous or over the top with my kid. Have I grabbed them to get their attention? Yes. I have parented them. It's a hard line to walk. But instead of taking the cut up audio, when we never had the full audio, and using the context in which it was supposed to make us feel, and I will be completely candid. When I heard it, I thought, man, he's done with the Chiefs, especially considering his own background, the guys they've had, the issues they've worked through. You almost want to credit the NFL for going like, all right, let's find out what's real and let's find out what's assumed. And since they can't find anything that's real, they have no choice other than to let him play football and put in the line or two about, look, the investigation is still open. If more information comes out, we reserve the right to act then. I don't think it's a great moment for the National Football League, but I think it's a good moment for all of us to take a breath and realize that charges and accusations are just that. And that the NFL, an organization, a league that has trying to be extra careful because they know they've botched this thing 6 times sideways. That the NFL can't find anything. With the information that's been provided, they can't find anything that says he absolutely did it. And with that, they're left with no choice but to let him play football. Doug Gottlieb in for Colin. This is The Herd. Crazy stuff. And just from a football perspective, from a human being, and look, I feel bad for any child who has to go through, if he didn't do anything wrong, or he didn't do anything that the level that we thought he should be charged with, or he should be suspended for, or whatever, I still feel for the kid because he's in a home situation that's so toxic that his mom would try and set up his dad to admit to abusing him when he didn't. Like, there's no win for the kid. Either the dad is violent towards the kid, the dad and the mom are violent towards the kid, or the mom thinks so little of the dad that she wants to set up the dad to make it look like he did something wrong and he should be charged with a crime. Like, either way, the kid loses. Let's welcome in John Middlecoff, who joins us. 3 and Out is the podcast and the Herd Podcast Network. He's a former NFL scout. Let's start with running backs. Obviously, there's 2 very different running backs. Melvin Gordon was the first one to come out and say, like, hey, you know what? If I don't get what I want, I'm going to sit. Now, for people who don't know, Gordon's different than Le'Veon Bell because he's under contract. This is the 5th year of his rookie deal. He'd make $5 million and change. The Chargers made him an offer that he did not feel was respectable, and so he continues to threaten to sit, although obviously he hasn't missed anything as of yet. What are your thoughts on Melvin Gordon and the ground he stands on trying to hardline negotiate with the Chargers?
Yeah, I mean, I think he has, some solid footing. That they're a team with Super Bowl aspirations. They're a team built to win right now, and he's one of their key cogs, on their team. They drafted him high. He's done everything they've asked in terms of being a good guy. Now, he's battled some injuries. The things he has going against him is he's battled some injuries. Like you said, they've extended an offer, so it's not like they're unwilling to pay him, but there is. I think you have to be prudent in terms of you can't overpay these running backs, especially a guy with an injury history, because we see what it has done to the Rams. And let's face it, Todd Gurley's a much superior player, and at the time you paid him, you felt better about that. Now it looks way worse a little bit later, but I don't know. I mean, I'll be shocked if they don't give him some sort of little kicker, but what if he doesn't take it? I mean, they have a lot of other guys to pay on this team that, I think you'd argue that are much more important given how hard it is to replace them. So I don't know. I mean, the Chargers have a history of being a little cheap, being a little tight with money. I mean, we've seen the payouts from the media rights. We know all these teams have the cash, but you do have to be smart about how you allocate it. And I'd say paying a running back, even one that you draft in the first round, can get you in trouble.
Yeah, look, I think what's interesting is everyone wants to use the Todd Gurley deal, but the Todd Gurley deal looks like a bad contract. And if you want to use the Le'Veon Bell contract, you just can point out, hey, Le'Veon Bell contract's so bad, the GM who signed it got fired shortly thereafter. Like those may seem like comps for your house, if you will, but those are not quality comps. And if you're the Chargers, you were able to win without him. You've offered him a deal. I've been told it was in the $10 million a year variety for the first couple of years, in the mid-20s in terms of guaranteed money. Or he could roll the dice, play for 5.5. They could franchise tag him. He'd make roughly $18 million over the next 2 years. So therein kind of lies their bump, and he has to decide, do I want to show up or not? And if I don't, unlike Le'Veon Bell, there's fines that they can levy because he's under contract.
For sure. I mean, a couple of years ago, maybe it was last year, might have been 2 years ago, they gave the Atlanta Falcons gave Devontae Freeman, looking right now, about $22 million. So that's a little less than the guarantees that Le'Veon got. But ever since they gave him that contract, he's been injured. He's struggled to stay on the field. And that's not $22 million, in pro sports guaranteed isn't that much. But again, when it's a running back and then that player, you play 2 seasons and he only plays 20 games, that's a problem. And that's the biggest issue. For the most part, an offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, a wide receiver are probably going to be there. With these running backs, at any moment, you look up at their game logs, and they've played 9 of 16 games. And when you've allocated a lot of cash to them, that hurts.
He's only been healthy 1 of the last 4 years, and you don't get healthier as you get older, right? No one gets healthier. All right, what about Ezekiel Elliott? The Cowboys are trying to navigate the Dak thing. Now Zeke's like, hey, I want mine. How does that end up?
I think this is pretty simple. Doug, you have kids, and I talked about this on my podcast. If your son gets in trouble at school, he doesn't ask that day to go play with his friends. Like Zeke, you just got in trouble, and you've been in trouble countless times. Like, I don't think this is the right time to kind of take a hardline stance of you need some more cash. Like, just lay low. Jerry's had your back every step of the way. You were the number 4 overall pick. He got $24 million. And, Doug, his 5th-year option next year is $9 million, like the money that all these guys want. So at the end of his 5 years as a first-round pick, he'll have made almost $34 million. And, again, Jerry Jones is his biggest supporter, who, when that draft room wanted to take Jalen Ramsey, he's like, no, I want Zeke. And then 2 years ago when Zeke got suspended, he went toe-to-toe with the commissioner, and Jerry was ticked off. So I don't understand if you're Zeke. It's one thing if you're playing for Belichick and at any moment he can get rid of you and doesn't care about you. That's not the case here. Like Zeke, this guy, is going to like you more in the NFL than any other GM or any other coach in the league. He's got your back. He wants to pay you. Plus, he's the guy cutting the check, so he will pay you. But come on, bro. You just... you were acting like an idiot in Vegas. Now, it wasn't a suspendable offense, but you caused Jerry a headache, and you had to go see the commissioner. Just to even let this leak out that you're thinking about it, to me, is a borderline embarrassment. And I know the media now is so pro-player, but this should be universally kind of, the stance on this one from our perspective should be, come on, Zeke, you're in the wrong here, buddy. Yeah.
This is the guy who just got caught in an uncomfortable situation with another woman, then going to his wife and saying, "Hey, what do you think about a guy's trip, a guy's golfing trip?" And she's like, "No, now is not the time." John Middlecoff, our guest. 3 and Out is the podcast. I feel like the NFL not punishing Tyreek Hill tells you they got nothing. That the audio, though uncomfortable and led many of us to believe that something bad happened, the full audio has to either vindicate him or have no smoking gun in it, because we've seen them suspend guys for what they assume to have happened. Why do you think the NFL, to this point, has walked away, put the gun back in the holster in terms of how they're handling Tyreek Hill in the domestic violence case?
Well, I know this. I know the Chiefs people pretty well, and they were very, very confident. 2 things with Tyreek. Obviously, what happened when he was at Oklahoma State, they took a chance on him. But ever since they've had him, they think he has been nothing but a model kid. Like, they sign off on him. They go to the mat for him, where if you talk to them about Kareem Hunt, they thought it was the opposite. So when this happened, they believed everything he was telling them. And my take was always simple, like I think most people with common sense. If he did it, he should go to jail, But if he didn't, sometimes the way it snowballs on social media can be uncomfortable with us just saying this guy's guilty before none of us know. Right. But I think your question about the NFL, I don't know. It doesn't make much sense because it does feel like they've nailed a lot of people who have also been in a position where, it's just kind of unclear. Now, obviously a lot of people have stood before Roger and said they were innocent, and he still suspended them. So I do understand the people that go, well, this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't add up. I would tend to agree. I don't quite get it because you would assume even if they were unclear and they couldn't get her to testify in front of the league, which obviously she has zero legal ramification to talk to Roger Goodell. Like she doesn't have to do that. But you'd think they'd just give him like a 2-gamer, for basically just putting your name, in front of the league. I mean, Reuben Foster, Doug, he's obviously injured now, but the time when last year at Tampa Bay when his ex-girlfriend came and she claimed he hit her, which proved to be another lie, they docked him. They didn't suspend him, but just for getting arrested at the team hotel, again, on something he did not do, they took away 2 game checks. So that there's not really much consistency with Roger Goodell. I would say this one's a little head-scratcher. I would have assumed, even if they thought he was innocent, just for dragging the name of the Shield, through the headlines, he'd get a couple games. So big win for the Chiefs. I mean, I'd say non-quarterback, you could argue he's the best offensive player in the league. I mean, he's an unstoppable force. So from a football perspective, this is a pretty big game changer for the NFL.
No question. No question. And combined with Pat Mahomes and that offense, completely changing the dynamic of that team and of the league.
And that week 1 last year against the Chargers was just
couldn't stop him. Thanks so much, John. John Middlecoff, 3 and Out is the podcast. Download that in the Herd Podcast Network. Guarantee we're going to overreact to 7 things the first week in the NFL season. Tell you what they are next in the Herd.